Hello everyone, my name is Otavio and this is the Galilean Library, and today I'm here with my wrap-up for the month of July. I've read a total of 6 books the past month, of which I am extremely proud, and I've also read a lot of short stories. And I've been trying to read more short stories for a while, and I finally succeeded this past month, which I am so happy about. It was such a great experience. Some of them were the Hugo nominees for this year, and because I've read so many, and including the Hugo nominees, I have decided to not talk about them in this video because it would clutter the video and make it unnecessarily long. And instead, I am starting a new video series of short story recommendations in which I will be talking about my favorite short stories for the past month. You can expect the first video in the series to be uploaded probably next Wednesday or Thursday, and I have some really interesting short stories for you guys. I will not be talking about the ones that I didn't like, aka all of the Hugo nominees, but if you want to see my opinion on those, I probably have reviews for them on Goodreads. And with that out of the way, let's start the wrap-up. The first book that I've read in July was The People in the Trees by Hanya and Yanagihara. And I've read this with Rachel over at Kalanadi, and we had some of the most amazing discussions over this book. It was such a great experience, and Rachel was fantastic to read with. And I've also done a review for this book, and you can check that out if you want to know more about it. I'm not going to talk too much about it since I've done the review already, but suffice it to say, it was one of my favorite books of the year so far, and I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4.8 stars, and you can check out the review for the specifics on why I think this is such a fantastic book. The next book I finished in July was The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson, and this is a beast of a book at about 1,000 pages, a little bit more than that actually, and I really enjoyed it as well. It took me a really long time to finish. Basically, I started this book during the Fantasy February challenge over at the BookTube Reading Buddies, and yeah, I only finished it in July. Yes, but the amount of time it took me to finish, it's no indication whatsoever on how much I liked it because I really enjoyed it. So this is an entirely new fantasy setting, and I can't even begin to explain exactly anything about it, except that it's in a world where really huge, strong storms happen almost all the time, and because of that, the wildlife and human development has taken an entirely different path than on Earth. So giant crabs populate this planet, and other like mollusk or, you know, sea sort of type of creatures that actually live on the land. And there is a very cool magic system, as with every single Sanderson book out there. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. Premise 5 stars. In terms of plot and pace, I think throughout reading it, you can realize that there is a bigger story arc here that is going to be told throughout the series, which is going to consist of 10 books. And yeah, you can tell that it's going to be epic, because if every single book is 1,000 pages, like, how many years am I going to take to read that? I'm kind of scared, actually. No. Sometimes, however, the pace does suffer a little bit. I felt like it could have been a tad shorter, just in some areas, but it wasn't too bad. It really did keep me interested. So, plot and pace, 4.5 stars. This is a really character-focused story, and we have a few main characters, and we, you know, alternate between them throughout the story. And for the most part, I really enjoyed him. However, I did not enjoy the main character in this particular book, Kaladin. He was kind of a pain in the ass. I really did not love him, and yeah. I don't know, I just felt like his story was a little bit done. I've read a lot of, you know, other fantasy characters that are similar to him, and that kind of bored me a little bit. But every other character in the story I really enjoyed. Shallan specifically was one of my favorite characters. The fact that I didn't enjoy Kaladin as much as the other ones doesn't really detract from it as well, because his story was also interesting. He wasn't completely devoid of charisma, so I just didn't love him, but he was okay, and The fact that he wasn't my favorite didn't really distract from the story too much. So characters, 4.5 stars. In terms of writing and storytelling, you know that Brandon Sanderson knows how to weave a fantastic story. There's tremendous amounts of foretelling here. Like, I can assure you that after I read at least a few other books in the series when they're out, and I come back to this, I will have seen so much in here that hints at future events in the books. And you can just tell that because Sanderson really, really planned this story from beginning to end, and that is just amazing, and it shows. And even though his writing is a little bit simple sometimes, I enjoyed it. It's super easy to read, and it's not daunting. So for a nice fantasy in which you want to focus on the plot and the world building, that works for me. So writing and storytelling, 5 stars. Ending and satisfaction, I loved how this ended, and I'm not gonna say any more because that would be a spoiler, but it was really great. It was a fantastic ending, and it makes me want to read the next book without it being a cliffhanger. I don't know if that's a spoiler, but I don't think so. Yeah. It was really great. It was really, really great. So ending and satisfaction, 5 stars. So on average, The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson comes down to a 4.8 stars and 5 stars on Goodreads. So really, really great book. In terms of the score, it ties in with The People in the Trees for my favorite book of the year, though there are some other aspects that are, go beyond just ratings. But yeah, a really, really fantastic book. A great beginning to a fantastic series, and I cannot wait to see where this goes. The next book I've read in July was Pines by Blake Crouch, and that has been recently adapted into a TV show, Wayward Pines, on Fox, and I haven't watched it yet, but I hear it's really great. And this was one of the books that I featured on my Unpopular Opinions book tag, because a lot of people haven't enjoyed it, and I did. I really thought it was fun, it was a great read, and I did listen to it as an audiobook, and yeah. Basically, we follow this detective as he wakes up in an idyllic, beautiful town, and somewhere in Washington, I think, and it's just like this perfect little town. Everything is perfect. Nobody has any faults. Everybody's perfect. And he finds that really disconcerting and weird. And when he wakes up in this town, he doesn't know who he is immediately, and he runs around trying to figure out what's going on. And we follow him through that, and while discovering again like who he is and why he's there and what the hell is going on. And I find that premise really interesting. And it's a really great plot device to have the main character not know everything that's going on, because we're discovering everything with him. So premise, 4 stars. Plot is not incredibly intricate, though there are a lot of hints. It's a mystery novel, so you're always at the edge of your seat waiting to see what's going on and what's happening. So I found that very interesting. Yeah, I really, really thought it was really well paced. Not perfect, but really good. So plot and pace, 4 stars. Now, the characters in this book I really thought were great, and aside from the main character, I really enjoyed every single one of them. The main character was he was sort of like a blank person, in which I think you're supposed to project your own sensibilities and characteristics into, but that just doesn't work for me that much. So he wasn't the best, but every other character in the book I really did enjoy. Some of them are fantastic, actually. So characters, 4.5 stars. In terms of writing and storytelling, this is one of the parts in which the book suffers a little bit, and that is mostly because it feels like the writing is a bit sudden and a bit studied, and it's just not great writing. And as an audiobook, that is a little bit mitigated because you're not actually reading the words. And for me, it helped, but for a lot of people it didn't. It didn't detract from the story for me personally. So writing and storytelling, 3.5 stars. Now, the ending for this book is really, really great in my opinion, and I thought the reveal was fantastic, and I can't say any more than that. It really did leave me interested in the rest of the story, either by watching the TV show or by reading the rest of the books in the series, which there are 2. And because of that, I think this is like one of the biggest reasons why I enjoyed the book so much. And ending and satisfaction for me, 5 stars definitely. So the average comes down to 4.2 stars. So yeah, really great book. Not everyone's favorite, so maybe it's not for you. It just depends if you like this sort of story and is willing to overlook some of the faults that it has, over the mystery and the intriguing plot, at least in my opinion. And if you do start it and think it's not great, I hear the TV show really does take care of a lot of the faults it has, so that's another way to consume this story in a better medium, and I will definitely be giving the TV show a chance as well in the near future. The next book I've read is The Three-Body Problem by Cixin Liu, and this is a science fiction set in the near future and also with some portions set during the Cultural Revolution in China. So yes, it's a Chinese science fiction and it's set in China. It was originally written in Chinese. It's part of a really popular series in China, and it's now being translated into English. The next book is coming out also this year, and I'm really excited about that one. So we follow two main characters. One is the daughter of a physicist during the Cultural Revolution in China, and we follow her when she is recruited to be a part of this scientific team, this very secret base in China. The other main character is on present or near future China. He's also a physicist helping develop nanotechnology in a lab. In his time period, we realize that a lot of theoretical physicists are killing themselves, and that's the main mystery of the story. Why is that happening? And how is that connected to the earlier parts of the story that take place in the Cultural Revolution? So really, really fantastic setting here, great premise, 4.5 stars. This reads a bit like a mystery novel mixed in with hard science fiction and historical fiction as well. So that was really fantastic. And the mystery does unfold in very satisfying ways, and by the end you are thoroughly into this story, and I thought it was really well done. So plot and pace, 4 stars. Now the characters in this book, some of them are really interesting, others are kind of undeveloped. For example, the main character in the present day part of the story, he's very underdeveloped in my opinion. I don't really know much about him. I just know that he's supposed to be the hero of the story, and we just follow him. And much like in Pines, I feel like he is a blank sort of character in which we're supposed to put in our characteristics and put in ourselves to be experiencing this world through his eyes, but that doesn't work really well for me, I think. So I didn't enjoy his characteristics or his characterizations that much. The other main character that we follow mostly during the Cultural Revolution in China, she was fantastic and really well developed, and I really enjoyed her character. So for those reasons, I feel like it's a little there's not a lot of balance in terms of character development. She's enough of a great character to save this aspect of the book for me. So characters, 3 stars. Now, the writing in this, I can't be sure how much of it is due to the translation and how much was intended originally by the author. So I can't really be sure what I am rating here, if it's the translation or if it's the original writing, because I can't read in Chinese, so I can't compare. But it is really interesting writing, and there is a tendency to info dump, which can be a little taxing if you're not into the whole scientific part of it and into understanding the science behind it. But if you are, it will be really interesting for you. And it was for me. I really thought it was great, but the amount of info dumping sometimes can get a little taxing. Overall, writing for me is a 3.5 stars. In terms of the ending, however, I found it to be okay. It just happened and it was fine. And it was a bit interesting, but also not my favorite ending ever, so no strong opinion over it. It was just okay. So for that reason, I gave it 3 stars. Overall, the average comes down to 3.6 stars or a 4 stars on Goodreads. So really great story. I really enjoyed it, and I am really looking forward to the next book. I hear they get progressively better, so I really am. Like, I can't wait for it to be released. So yeah, I really recommend this for anyone who likes hard science fiction, because the info dumping can get a little taxing for anyone who doesn't like that kind of story. But if you do, you are sure to really enjoy yourself while reading this. The next book I finished in July was The Ghost Brigades by Scalzi. This is the sequel to Old Men's War, and I really enjoyed it. Basically, some parts of it are a continuation of the story of the previous book. However, we follow an entirely new character, and initially I found that to be a little jarring because I really enjoyed the main character in the first book, but in the end I enjoyed the character in this book just as much, so that wasn't a problem. It was a really fantastic setting, not the best science fiction setting out there, but interesting all the same. So premise, 4 stars. In terms of plot and pace, I thought it was a really well-paced book, and you're always on the edge of your seat and always want to read it as fast as you can. It's just one of those kinds of books that you can read in one sitting if you want, and that was really great for me. However, the plot, I felt, was very predictable and not very intricate, not that fantastic, and it was fun. It wasn't anything innovative, but it was really fun. For that reason, plot and pace, 3.5 stars. Now the characters, like I said, they change a little bit in this, so we follow a different set of characters, even though there are some characters that are in both novels. The main character, however, from the first book doesn't even appear here, and the main character here is an entirely new character, and at first that was a bit sad. I wasn't really into it, but over the course of the book I ended up really enjoying the main character here, and I really enjoy the themes surrounding him and identity that are in this book. Even though they are just, you know, surface level themes, they are still interesting. And overall, I really enjoyed the new character here. I enjoyed the characters that came back for this book, so 4.5 stars. So in terms of writing and storytelling, I feel like the style changed a little bit. There is a lot more info dumping in this, and sometimes I really enjoy info dumping. However, I am of a mindset of show, not tell, so it felt a little bit like the author was just telling us a bunch of information just to get it out of the way, and it could have been done in a more interesting way, in a way that involved more dialogue instead of long texts explaining the history of whatever. So it was interesting, but I feel it could have been done better, so for that reason I gave writing and storytelling 3.5 stars. Now, ending and satisfaction, I really did enjoy the ending of this. I thought it was unexpected out of the whole, a very expected plot, so that was a nice change, and I'm not going to say anymore, as always, that would be a spoiler, so suffice it to say, I enjoyed it, ending and satisfaction, 4.5 stars. The average comes down to 4 stars, rounded, and yeah, I enjoy this. I really am looking forward to the next book in the series. I am definitely continuing, and I want to finish them as soon as I can, so I probably will be starting that this next month. The last book I finished in July was Soulless by Gail Carriger. Basically, we follow a spinster in England who has an Italian heritage and is very sassy, very bossy, and is just a fantastic character. And in this universe, set in Victorian times, a bit of a steampunky Victorian times as well, werewolves and ghosts and vampires are out of the closet, they're in society, and people sort of accept them, and it's an interesting dynamic here. It's not overly new. I have seen stories that are similar to this before, even though they weren't set in Victorian London. It was still very interesting, and the fact that the main character is a spinster who is super sassy in Victorian times gave credence to this premise so much. It was the best part about it. So premise, 3 stars. The plot, much as in the Ghost Brigades, was very predictable, but the pacing was done to perfection. It was so well paced, fantastic, super fast to read. You can sit down and read it in one sitting. Really great. For that reason, 4 stars to plot and pace. And the characters in this are the shining star of this book. They're all amazing. All of them are really well developed, really well done, and they're all so funny and so hilarious. And the one-liners in here that the characters say are just, wow, it's so good. It's so good. So characters, 4.5 stars. Now, writing and storytelling also I really enjoyed. I thought, like I said, the dialogue was amazing, super fantastic, and the banter between the characters was just out of this world. And the development of this world as well, even though it's familiar, it was also really well done. And I think Carriger does a really great job at creating this Britishness about it, even though it is written in an American grammar. And if you are British, you will definitely notice that more than if you are American. And it might get a bit jarring for you, but I am not a native English speaker, so it wasn't a problem for me. So writing and storytelling, 4 stars. Now, ending and satisfaction, I thought the ending, while climatic and interesting, was a bit okay, like just meh. It was fine. It was not a bad ending. It was just an okay, good ending. I wasn't knocked out of my seat for any reason, but it was good, and for that reason, ending and satisfaction, 3 stars. The average comes down to 3.7 stars, or 4 stars on Goodreads, and yes, I had a lot of fun reading this. It's not a groundbreaking book, but it's so fantastic, and the characters are all the reason you need to read this. And their dialogue is just done to perfection. I really enjoyed it. So that's it for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed this wrap-up, and if you want to see more, click subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Ciao! This is heavy. This is really heavy. The Todd will finish talking about it soon, because it's heavy. But... it's falling. Ow!